So it's important to understand that that is like one of the most important histologies of cervical cancer, which will be right in line with probably one of your areas of concentration. Okay? Is squamous cell carcinoma being one of the most common types of cervical cancer. Now, furthermore, when you talk about cervical cancer, it's much different than any of the other cancers you typically would talk about because surgery is not the gold standard in patients who have stage 2 and stage 3 disease. Now, you can do surgical intervention in patients who have stage 1, but in stage 2 and stage 3, we do something called brachytherapy. B-R-A-C-H-Y therapy. And I'll pull up the hand that just so you have a little bit better gauge of okay. All right. Yeah, so surgery, not necessarily something that we do very frequently. The preference, if you see once a patient has up to stage 2B, stage 1B2, the recommendation is actually to do the external beam and brachytherapy in combination with chemotherapy. So that's one of the most important things to know about cervical cancer, that surgery, while it's an option if you have early stage, there are scenarios when you get to your stage 1B2 or 2B and above that you actually want to do radiation and chemotherapy and no surgery, okay? Now, when we're talking about radiation and chemotherapy, the drug that you guys, we're not adding any new drugs to the party. So we had our drugs that we talked about. The drug of choice here is cisplatin. We talk a lot about carboplatin, but this is cisplatin when we're talking about cervical cancer, okay? So only one dose for cervical cancer do you need to know. Okay, one dose. The dose is cisplatin, 40 milligrams per meter squared. 40 milligrams per meter squared. Somebody got a marker? I'll get my marker back. Thank you so much. So cervical cancer, got squamous cell, and you got external beam radiation plus cisplatin and brachytherapy. Plus cisplatin. This total situation takes typically 6 to 7 weeks. And they get the cisplatin, 40 milligrams, 40 milligrams per meter squared, okay, weekly. And that's going to be times the whole entire time. So you're going to get the cisplatin 6 weeks or 7 weeks. It's always 40 milligrams per meter squared. This is the kicker. This is the kicker with cervical cancer. When you're dosing cisplatin, it's a max of 70 milligrams. So if we had a patient who had a BSA 2, what dose should they get? 70 milligrams. As opposed to what? 80 milligrams. So 7. It never goes above 7 when you're giving chemo radiation with cisplatin in patients with cervical cancer. Very important. Okay? Sure. that's another cisplatin. I'm about to briefly touch on that so you understand why I wrote it like that. Okay. So the reason I wrote it like this is because external beam radiation is one thing. The brachytherapy is another thing. So there's different ways to deliver energy to the area where the cervical cancer resides, but the cisplatin stays consistent. So external beam radiation means the beams are coming from the outside. Let's say this is the cervical cancer tumor. The radiation beams are coming from the outside, right? They sit the patient in the machine and they have the machine rotating around and delivering energy specifically to the cervical cancer tumor, okay? That's external beam. Brachytherapy, on the other hand, we'll still have the same cervical tumor because this is at the end. This increases the amount of radiation that can actually get to the cervical cancer tumor. They put rods right next to the cervical cancer tumor, and then they radiate the rods, and then they emit more energy right around the cervical tumor. Much more energy here than what you get here. But you can only do this for a shorter period of time. So it's just two ways to get radiation, and it boosts the amount of radiation that's given to the cervical tumor when you're giving brachytherapy. This cisplatin dose is what we call a radiation sensitizing dose. So it's not a therapeutic dose. It's actually not even there to actually give chemotherapeutic effects or cytotoxic effects. It's more like a broom. The radiation is supposed to weaken and damage and kill a lot of the cancer cells. The cisplatin is supposed to help move the cancer cells into the cell cycle where they're most sensitive to the radiation. And if you have a cancer cell that witnessed a sublethal dose of radiation to where they're weakened and they're dying but they haven't died yet, the chemotherapy comes around and sweeps them up. Okay? So in reference to cervical cancer, that's essentially your responsibilities on cervical cancer. You need to know the functionality of cisplatin. You need the functionality of this, not even this detail of radiation, but the dosing of the cisplatin, the histology of the cervical cancer, and then finally, we talked about a checkpoint inhibitor, right? What checkpoint inhibitor we talked about? Checkpoint inhibitor. Checkpoint inhibitor is the drug class of the PD-L1, PD-1 inhibitors. So which one is that? Pembrolizumab. So where's pembrolizumab used in breast cancer? Triple negative. Pembrolizumab used in triple negative breast cancer is actually also used in the adjuvant treatment of cervical cancer. So understand that pembrolizumab doesn't only have a utility in breast cancer, it also has a utility in the treatment of adjuvant therapy in cervical cancer. Okay? So don't limit it to just breast cancer. It's breast cancer triple negative, but it's cervical cancer across the board in adjuvant treatment. Okay. I'm not going to make you know the regimen, but I will show you the regimen just real briefly so you can see what I'm talking about. So when we came in, they had the pembrolizumab, and we were really checking to see if patients had PD-L1 positivity. Means we do an assay and it'll show if there's some kind of PD-L1 expression. Okay. So now you fast forward, and this is the most recent guidelines that were just released. These studies were just done, which is why I actually brought the papers out. I don't even think how many we got on there. This one's not as bad though. I think this one was probably like 90-something pages. Cervical cancer guidelines is 96. Yeah, so it's not as long as the other, but if you go down to the treatments now with the most recent version in 2023, you'll see that the pembrolizumab has now been added as a recommendation for the adjuvant treatment. So there. There we go. So when we're talking about chemoradiation, of course, we're talking about the cisplatin or the carboplatin in patients who can't tolerate the doses of the cisplatin, because cisplatin causes more nephrotoxicity, more thrombocytopenia, more neutropenia than you'll see with the carboplatin. Carboplatin, the only time I can argue maybe has a little bit more toxicity is maybe when we're talking about the thrombocytopenia, but for the most part, neutropenia, nephrotoxicity, ototoxicity, because the platinums can cause ringing in your ears. It's all more prominent with cisplatin. Okay, they even cause neuropathy. So the pembrolizumab is one of the preferred agents when you're treating in the first line for patients who have recurrent or metastatic cervical cancer. And so that's where I want you guys to make sure you understand that it has a utility in cervical cancer also. And that's all I essentially want you to know about cervical cancer. Are those, yes ma'am?
Can you repeat that again? It's first line for recurrent.
It's first line for recurrent metastatic disease, and it's going to be used in combination with the platinum as well as taxanes and Avastin, but just understanding that that checkpoint inhibitor does have utility in cervical cancer. So make sure you don't like write it out to where it's limited to only triple negative breast cancer. It also can be used in cervical cancer now. So anybody have any questions about that?
So what is
Brachytherapy. Those are like rods that can accept radiation, going unfortunately into the patient to be as close as possible to the cervical cancer tumor, and then delivering boosted radiation directly to the area where the cervical cancer lies.
Like the shape you drew?
Mm-hmm.
Like the shape you drew?
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
Yeah. Okay.
And you said cisplatin, what is the purpose?
What about cisplatin?
What's the purpose?
Oh, sure. Cisplatin is used as a radiation sensitizer. A radiation sensitizer. Has anybody in here got Gardasil 9?
Yeah.
Y'all know what that is?
Yeah, HPV vaccine.
That's the HPV vaccine, that's correct. What else do you know about it?
It's used in cervical.
So, just for historical perspective, of course, you know, y'all have probably had y'all immunizations part when y'all were talking about vaccines, but not only does cervical cancer is it caused by squamous cells, so squamous cells are histology, but actually the pathophysiological process is HPV. So you don't really find a patient who has cervical cancer that doesn't have a history of HPV. You're going to be able to identify HPV because the chronic damage of the cervical mucosa is secondary to the HPV being present. So that Gardasil vaccine that's been designed has 9 subtypes of HPV, 7 of which are oncogenic. So it's very important that you understand about the oncogenic strains, which is what I've pretty much tried to list here when I have it 16 to 18 here. This is how it started, because it's changed 3 times since it was released. It started as just 2, and then it went to 4, and now it's 9. But what you guys need to understand is that there's 7 subtypes in Gardasil 9 that are actually focused on preventing cervical cancer. Does anybody know what the other 2 do? When y'all got the Gardasil, they didn't talk to y'all about what the Gardasil does for you. So in addition, the 16 and 18 are there, and there's some of these additional ones have been added to Gardasil 9, but the 6 and 11 are for genital warts. So patients can have 7 oncogenic subtypes that are protective, that the Gardasil 9 vaccine is protective against, as well as 2 of the subtypes that are associated with genital warts, which is HPV 6 and 11. So remember, 7 and 2 to make 9 Gardasil 9. 7 oncogenic, 2 for genital warts. Any questions? Okay. It's gonna sound real familiar on Monday, I'm just telling you. Okay? All right. So now let's do our breast cancer review. So y'all gonna tell me everything, right? Y'all gonna tell me everything I wanna hear today. pull up the practice problems. Did y'all work the practice problem? Or y'all haven't worked it yet? I still working on it? Huh?
You didn't give us the serum creatinine.
Ah, okay. So let's go one, practice problem one. So we got BV, 42-year-old Hispanic female, stage 3B, who has hormone receptor positive, HER2 negative breast cancer, which is synonymous with what? Triple negative, that's correct. You got triple negative breast cancer. All right. And patient is 5 foot 3 inches tall. Patient is 72 kilograms. And patient doesn't have a serum creatinine, but we need a serum creatinine. So let's put the serum creatinine at 0.8 milligrams per day. So what's the first thing y'all need to do with this patient? Calculate her BSA. Well, y'all calculate her BSA, but y'all know what y'all want to give her? Or y'all just calculate her BSA because y'all want some information? Y'all just want that information y'all know y'all gonna need. Okay, what's her BSA then? So BSA, I heard 1.7. 1.79. Do you have any objectives? Okay. Is there anything else you need? Yes, no, maybe so.
Ideal body weight. We need to calculate ideal body weight and then just the body weight and compare to see which weight we're gonna use for the creatinine.
True. True. So here's the actual body weight right here. What's the ideal body weight? $45.5 plus 2.3 times 3. Anybody? It's that 6.9 plus 45.5. I don't mean to do it in my head. Y'all got calculated? Said 52.4. Okay, and what percentage when comparing those two? 72 divided by 52.4. How many percent? 37%. So that means we're gonna need to do what? Now, what is my adjusted body weight? $52.4 plus 0.4 in parentheses, 72 minus 52.4. 60.24? Y'all agree or y'all don't agree? Yes. 62.4?
I got 60.24.
60.24. So now we know what body weight we're going to use for creatinine clearance, right? we have our age here, which that's one thing I didn't write up here, but I know I gave it to you. 42 years of age. Which 140 would need to be minus by that 42 years of age. You multiply by this adjusted body weight you have to come up with, all of which will be divided by 72 with this 0.8 here. And then multiply by what? 0.85, because it's a female.
You want a 4.1?
You got what?
104.1?
Is she the only one got a calculator here, or am I just, what's going on? Nobody else got a calculator? Or y'all only gonna do calculations on the day of the test?
No, it's fine.
If y'all, I mean, if y'all only gonna do it on that day, if y'all, I mean, I'm give me some practice, and that's what I'm gonna do. That's what I'm.
87.11.
I got 87.11 here, I got a 100 or something, so what is this?
I got 87.1.
87.1?
87.
Got multiple 87.
I multiplied the original weight of it, just
I understand that.
87.
Thank you. You gonna go 8, we just on 87.1?
Yes.
Alright, I got all of the good stuff now. This should be easy now. Now we need to bring it back, and you need to tell me what kind of treatment this patient is supposed to get. Triple negative, stage 3. What does she need?
Pembrolizumab.
Oh, I've heard one thing I agree with. She needs Pembro. What else does she need?
Taxol. Weekly Taxol. And Carboblood.
What are her doses?
For pembrolizumab is 200.
Flat dose of 200 milligrams. What else?
80.
This is weekly, so it's 80.
Carboblood maybe.
Hmm?
We have to calculate.
Okay. So we already got the dose of the Pembro. It's already there. What's the dose of the paclitaxel weekly? Which is, how'd you get there?
By multiplying the PSA with the dose of the Taxol, which is 75.
Taxol dose is 80 milligrams.
80.
did you give us the names? Wait, what are we doing? Doing the packet?
We're doing the paclitaxel.
Oh, okay.
142.4.
That's what I'm looking for. Okay. You said 140 what?
142.4.
142.4. Remember 10%. Huh?
I got 142.3.
143.2.
I got 143.3.
Alright. Be very mindful not to confuse. I already knew when he said it the first time that he used 75 and not 80. What is 75 for? Taxotere. This is Taxol. Those are two different drugs. It's paclitaxel or docetaxel. Paclitaxel, the dose is 80 milligrams per meter squared. Docetaxel, when we do one of the other practice problems, is going to be 75 milligrams per meter squared. Okay. So we got 2 doses now.
What's AUC?
What's the AUC? Correct. It's 5. Did one not say 5 in class last time we were in class?
I thought you said like
Correct. 6 is for TCH plus P. 5 is for triple negative patients. That is correct. Okay. Y'all got some more questions? it actually, you know, this y'all slap this around, cause I mean, this is just now, if I say AUC of 5, y'all should be like 87 plus 25 multiplied by 5. That's the answer.
560.5.
That's what I'm.
560? So how long are they gonna get this?
I'm sorry, what is it, the 560 come?
What's the calculus formula? Why you using?
25 plus creatinine clearance times your AUC.
So you have to use the calculus formula when you're calculating the dose of carboplatin. When you use the calculus formula, it's gonna be creatinine clearance, okay? Plus the non-renal clearance, which is what?
25.
25. The solution to that, which is in parentheses, multiplied by the desired AUC, which in this case is 5. And that's how you get 560. So what's going on? Hmm? She said nothing. Really, honestly, not a lot. Okay. So how long are they gonna be on this?
4 cycles.
Well, let's look at it. Let's look at it. Hold on. Let's look at it. So 87 plus 25, okay, is 100. It's like almost 150.
correct.
Yeah. So it's like one. Yeah. So it should be 5. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So this right here, this regimen, this lasts for 12 weeks. Then what happens afterwards? Do y'all know what happens afterwards?
There's another round. Pembrolizumab.
It's
Plus
Pembro,
doxorubicin, cyclophosphamide.
Pembro, doxorubicin.
The duration is the same as the previous.
And
regimen.
cyclophosphamide.
So still 200. What's this dose and this dose?
Doxorubicin, 60 milligrams per meter squared.
What's this one?
600 milligrams per meter squared.
And how long does this one last?
It's 4 weeks.
How often do they get this one?
Every 3 weeks.
Every 3 weeks.
Every 3 weeks.
How often do they get pembrolizumab on that one up there?
Every 3 weeks.
How often do they get the carboplatin up here?
Every 3 weeks.
What's the dose of the doxorubicin and cyclophosphamide? 60 milligrams times what?
1.7.
1.79.
107.4.
What's the one last thing we do here?
Just pembrolizumab.
Pembrolizumab.
Just
How long?
27.
How many cycles?
It's
9
9
cycles.
cycles.
That's all. That's it. That's the answer to number 1. Hey, Take out the bubble, they need more time, they need more time. Come in. Yeah, yeah, I got this. No, no, okay.
How much time do you allocate for such a number of exams?
You only give us 3 minutes.
I mean, what I did, I can tell you what I did on the test. It's not like I gave y'all like 40 problems like this or something like this. Not every problem is like this. And then one problem, it might be this, it might be the same patient with all of the same stuff, and I ask you multiple things about that patient.
Was that 5 questions on the exam or
It could be like, no, it could be like the same patient, and I'm asking you 4 questions about the same
the
patient.
same question or the next question?
It's like the next thing, like, you put boxes around it, like, you know, it might be like, you know, this is 1, and then this is 2, and then this is 3, and this is 4. And that's 4 of my 22 questions right there. Hmm? Yeah, you can read the formula. Hmm? Yes, sir.
So are these questions, are they multiple choice or are they
I mean, unfortunately, I have nothing multiple choice.
Something different.
Yeah, so you can probably, I mean, I know, I've seen the students in the exam, like, looking at the answers and working backwards. I've seen it, girl. It really should be an open-ended question I ask you. That's what it should be. But I know how it is, so, they're multiple choice. If you haven't noticed in my quizzes that I give you in lab, I don't like multiple choice. I want open-ended questions. Because see, when I ask y'all open-ended questions, then I really get the answer of what you think it is. If I ask you a multiple choice, you can get it right. You get it right by accident, or you get it right by process of elimination. Either way, you don't really know what you're talking about. Like when I get a call about one of my patients, it's not a multiple choice question. They're asking me an open-ended question that I should have the answer to because I should know the answer. So I really don't. When you get in real life, there's no multiple choice. You know. So, all right. So y'all have any questions about 1, and we'll do 2 and 3, and then I'll wrap it up with anything on the areas of concentration that I didn't talk about on 2 and 3. Christy, yes.
How often is Dr. Wilson given? Is that also every 3 weeks?
In this scenario, it's every 3 weeks. Yeah.
And also the cyclophosphamide?
Correct. So anything? Nothing on this one? Okay. Hmm? All right, so we're gonna make everybody sit and create a point A. I don't know if y'all realize this, but you know, like I'm teaching y'all probably like this is probably about like 20% or something, maybe 15 of like breast cancer therapeutics. Like this is only like 15%. This is only about 15%. Yes, sir.
Is it mostly like stage 4?
I mean, you probably triple the amount of agents if we talk about stage 4 patients. Number 1, and even when we're talking about stage 2 and stage 3 and stage 1 patients, I'm teaching you guys 2 to 3 regimens out of 10. Because if you see my handout, you notice there's a lot of regimens on there. All of those regimens can be used in this scenario. I'm just giving you the regimens that are most commonly utilized. And I say that so you don't like leave like feeling like you really. Like if you get a breast cancer question, and you don't feel, just give me the call. Just call me. Okay. All right, so this is a hormone receptor positive. HER2 negative patient. So before we go through, well, we'll go ahead and do this, but I'm gonna tell you, this is gonna possibly save you time in certain scenarios. So this patient is 5'1". And, oh, 5'11". Okay, so the patient's 5'11", and then they weigh 85. 85. So this is what I do, and this is why I asked y'all about the regimen in the first place. If I have a hormone receptor positive patient, they're HER2 negative, you want to choose your regimen first. You want to establish the patient's receptor positivities and negativities and choose your regimen first. So when you read through the case, the first thing you do is choose your regimen. So what regimen that I've taught you guys would you use with this patient? Dose dense AC. And what would that be followed by? AC. Followed by, I got weekly Taxol or remember the difference between Taxol and Taxotere. Okay, so what's the doses of dose dense AC? What about the cyclophosphamide? What's the dose of the weekly Taxol? What's the dose of the dose dense Taxol? How often do you give the dose dense Taxol? How often do you give the dose dense AC? How many cycles of dose dense Taxol, dose dense AC do you give?
4 cycles.
How many cycles of dose dense Taxol do you give? How many weeks of weekly Taxol do you give? What's the patient's BSA? Say again? 2.06. Is there a reason in reference to dosing that you would need to create a clearance? The answer is no. There's no carboplatin there. We don't even have any drugs that are like prominently renally cleared for you to possibly adjust the dose for that fashion. But you could make the argument, you calculate the creatinine clearance because you want to make sure that you don't need to make any dose adjustments to the chemotherapy secondary to renal dysfunction. But that's not even the case. So what we have here is a patient that where you don't necessarily need the creatinine clearance, so you don't have to worry about the adjusted body weight, the ideal body weight, because everything is going to be dosed with BSA. So now I know that I pretty much have dose of 120 milligrams, 1,200 milligrams. I have depending on which one I use, okay? You use like the dose dense regimen. So we'll go over here with 350. But if we wanted to use the weekly regimen, we could have 160. See, now I just answered 4 questions on the test in like less than 30 seconds. Hmm?
Yeah, the ESA too.
Yeah.
That's one.
I mean,
Make it two. Make it
make it 1.8. Make it one. Make it one. Does everybody understand this part? Yeah, are we done? There anything else? Maybe that? Patient is 39, so I'm gonna assume that she's pre-menopausal with no other information given. So I then have the option of doing tamoxifen for 7 years, or I can do an AI plus an LH-RH agonist for 5 years. And as I said, as things progress, you know, you can look at places, they'll be like, oh, we did a study with 10 years, oh, we did a study with 7 years, oh, we did a study with 5 years of tamoxifen with 5 years of AI. So there's a lot of different variations, but the 5 to 10 year span is what you always want to understand as far as optimal duration of therapy with endocrine therapy. And you need to know the menopausal status of the patient. Okay. Now there should be one more question before we leave question 2 that you all should want to ask. You should be like, hey, we need this information because we need to be able to see, you know, if we need to do something or not with this patient. Hmm? Yes. So we need the key 67. Okay, so this patient's key 67.
You couldn't make it 12.
Mm-hmm. Got it, no question. Hmm? How long? Hmm? Two things that I'll add to this one with Verzenio. So this data comes from the Monarch E trial, which is like early stage breast cancer patients who, when we talked about the key 67, we talked about the grade 3 disease, we talked about patients having lymph node involvement. Any patient who stage 3 has some lymph nodes that are involved. Okay, so they have lymph node, they're lymph node positive. We don't know the grade, and we don't know the size of the primary tumor, which if you wanted to be very stickler, you could ask for that, but we know that they have lymph node disease positive, and we know that their key 67 is about 20%, which in our clinical prowess is enough for us to put them on Verzenio. The reason why it's 2 years in reference to Verzenio is because they've done studies to show that the recurrence of patients who are, it doesn't matter if they're pre, post, or perimenopausal, when they're on endocrine therapy, if they do recur, it happens within the first 2 to 2.5 years of therapy. So that's the danger zone for them having a recurrence, like when they start endocrine therapy. And that's why you add the Verzenio or the abemaciclib in high-risk patients. If you notice, you get the abemaciclib, the 150 twice a day, there's no breaks. The reason why that's important is because there's 2 other drugs, same class, that you give a 7-day break. So Verzenio is continuous, okay? You don't stop. Only time you stop is toxicity, or you need to possibly hold the patient dose so you can change it to something else, like a lower dose, okay? So 2 years span, continuously given. Y'all asked about the key 67, which is what you needed, and you know that they're lymph node positive because they're stage 3. Now this patient's therapy is complete. So they got Dostin Saxy, they got Dostin Taxol. They followed it up after they had their surgery. We knew they were premenopausal. They got 5 years of the AI and the LHRH agonist on board, and the first 2 years is also gonna be abemaciclib.
Dr. Hunter, so first we have to start with those dense AC, and then, or is there another option for tonics?
You're always gonna start with the chemotherapy or surgery, because we could have did surgery and then did all of this after surgery. We would typically, in the stage 3 patient, do chemotherapy, and then surgery, and then radiation, and then the treatment with the endocrine therapy with the targeted therapy CDK4/6 inhibitor. So any questions about 2? Patient 2? Yes, ma'am.
No, just general question, when do we do the oncotype again? Is it before the?
Sure.
treatment?
So the oncotype is indicated in this type of patient who is node negative. So they have early stage disease. So they wouldn't be a patient that would actually even qualify for the abemaciclib. They would be a patient that would possibly only get endocrine therapy. So we would pretty much give them endocrine therapy unless their oncotype risk recurrence score is high. Then we would offer them chemotherapy also. So it's only in stage 1 patients who, yeah, so it's like earlier stage patients don't have lymph nodes involved. So it can benefit early stage 2 patients also, but no stage 3 patients like what we're talking about here. Okay? So are y'all ready to go to patient 3, or y'all have more questions?
Questions about the AOC. Was the Kadcyla the triple positive therapy that you went over?
So Kadcyla can be used in hormone receptor negative HER2 positive patients or triple positive patients, but they have to have HER2 amplification. Yeah, Kadcyla. All right. With patient 3, we'll touch on Kadcyla. Any questions on patient 2? All right.
Another question,
Sure.
so whenever we have a patient case,
Mm-hmm.
we just have the HR and the HER2, what about the ER and PR?
So when the way we look at ER and PR, they're both synonymous with hormone receptor. So if there's any hormone receptors that are positive, then we consider them to be a hormone receptor positive. So if you look at the pathology report, it's going to tell you that 15% of the receptors are estrogen and 66% are progestin. But when we're looking at treatment options, it doesn't matter if it's 10 and 10 or 5 and 5 or 6 and 7 or 8 and 12. If we say hormone receptor positive, we're going to use that endocrine therapy. Okay?
Because we're saying that if it's ER, basically we have to use the hormones. I don't know.
Well, so the way we look at it, even though, true enough, when you look at the positivity of the cells, you can have patients, which is a poor prognostic factor actually, if the patient is a progestin receptor only positive. So those patients are typically harder to treat. But we pretty much treat everybody with endocrine therapy that's focused on the estrogen pathway. Even though there are not a lot of patients, but there are a few patients where they're hormone receptor positive, but they're predominantly progestin receptor positive. And the only thing we know about those patients, even though we treat them with endocrine therapy, is that they have a poor prognosis. They have a poor prognosis compared to a patient who has estrogen receptors that are positive and progestin receptors that are positive. So patient 3, 54 years of age. (105 kilograms). (6'1". we choosing now. Triple positive. What do you want to do with triple positive patients? Hmm? I got it. T, C, H, and P. Okay. So let's go over what that is. What is this? Taxol? And what's this? Cyclophosphamide?
Carboplatin. Percent.
The trade name for pertuzumab is Perjeta, Perjeta. But I mean, pertuzumab still works. It doesn't work with Herceptin because Herceptin is trastuzumab, so you have to use the H. So what's the doses?
75.
What about the AUC of the carboplatin? Okay. What about the Herceptin?
6.
Pertuzumab?
840 loading. 420.
Bless you. So how often are they gonna get it?
Every 3
And how many times?
6 cycles.
Is this where we stop?
No.
How do we continue? Say what we do?
With HB. So it's a 34 week more weeks. To complete 1 year.
What's this or down here for? And why a patient get this and how much do they get?
They have their safety.
How long do they get it?
14 weeks every 3 weeks.
14 cycles every 3 weeks.
3.6 milligrams per kilogram.
Okay. So we got our complete treatment scenarios here. See, now you start doing the calculations that you establish exactly what the dose is going to be for each agent you're going to use and the duration of each agent. Then you start the calculations. That's the more efficient way to probably do this. All right. So now y'all gotta, what y'all gotta do now? What's the bid say? Said 2.32? Everybody agree with that? 2.33? Okay, so we'll go there. So we got the actual, what's the ideal? 45.5 plus, what we got here? 2.3 times 11. What y'all come up with? Anything? I'm still waiting until the exam. Nobody got an answer?
I got 50
75.4, 75.4, anything, is anybody different? Be like 23 plus 2.3, to make 25.3 plus 45.5. So tell it to me, what is it again?
75.4.
I can already tell that it's above 30%. So what is the percentage when you do 105 divided by 75.4? 39% over. So now we got our adjusted body weight here. What's our adjusted body weight? 75.4 plus 1. You said what?
87.4.
87.4?
87.24.
Okay. I have any disagreements here? One other thing we need to do, let's calculate the creatinine clearance. Patient's 54 years of age. We're gonna use adjusted body weight. Percent creatinine is 0.8.
110.76.
Somebody else get 110. Well, anybody? I got one person got 110. So only one person calculated creatinine clearance. Y'all be baffling me, man, because y'all don't want to do the calculation in the class when it's not punitive. But then you want to go to the test in like 3 days, and then you want to start doing the calculations. But then you not doing it right now.
I got 110.
Okay. 110 plus 25 to make 135 times what? AUC is 6. Okay, so what's the dose on the carbo?
813.
It's not something you have to know, but we typically max the dose of carbo out at 900. So if you do the math, you'll know that 900 means that the creatinine clearance is capped at 125 milliliters per minute. So you can actually get patients that are larger and younger, and they have creatinine clearances that are calculated like 150 or 148, 170, not 175, they're calculated one that high. I've calculated them well above 125. If it ever goes above 125, we cap it at 120, at 125. So you should never get a dose that's above 900 milligrams if you got an AUC of 6. Because the creatinine clearance should never be utilizing the equation above 125. Okay? So what's the dose of Herceptin, the loading dose? 8 times 105. 840. Okay. Coincidentally, same dose as the pertuzumab. What's the dose of the Taxotere?
150.
Taxotere, 2.3 times 75. And what's the maintenance dose of the Herceptin? And lastly, because the patient did have residual disease, what's the dose y'all calculate for the cat solid? 105 times.
378%.
Okay, we'll go with that. All right, do y'all have any questions?
Dr. Hamid,
Yes?
I have an issue with the IBW.
Hmm?
I have an issue with the IBW.
Which one you got?
The ID. I get 73.1.
You get 72.1.
خیلی مشکل من کجا اینه؟
6 feet.
Well, I can already tell you. What you should have been, what you should use is 13. Yeah, 13. Because it's 12 inches plus another 1 was 13. So y'all have any questions about patient 3?
For second use, the actual body weight and our.
Always. Yeah, any monoclonal antibody, actual body weight. I think you're done with the math portion. All right. So now, I know we definitely got some practice there. Definitely practice there too. Okay, so treatment options for stage 2 and 3 patients who have hormone receptor positive, HER2 negative, triple negative, and triple positive breast cancer. All of which we just talked about this one. Patient 1, 2, and 3. Clinical indications of external beam radiation. Can somebody tell me what those are? Clinical indications of external beam radiation in breast cancer. What you say?
Margin is positive.
Positive margins. Lymph nodes that are positive. BCS, breast conserving surgery, which is synonymous with lumpectomies or segmental mastectomies. All of those patients indicated that they get external beam radiation if they have breast cancer. Okay, calculate the dose of BSA, weight, and Coward's formula. We just did that. Know the toxicity of the platinums, taxanes, nitrogen mustards, targeted therapy, immunotherapy, and endocrine therapy. So what do y'all say about platinums? That's any chemotherapy that's gonna be there. Not with the platinums. And I didn't put the anthracyclines on there, but yeah, that's a good call, because the anthracyclines are the ones that cause the cardiotoxicity. Okay. Nephrotoxicity. So you think platinums, you should also always think nephrotoxicity. So nephrotoxicity, ototoxicity, okay, neurotoxicity, and then we talked about the myelosuppression, of course, is there also. But yeah, definitely think about nephrotoxicity and ototoxicity. What about taxanes? So bone marrow depression, which is more prominent with Taxotere. When you're looking at neuropathy, which is another one of the really common side effects, that's more common with Taxol or paclitaxel. When you're looking at patients who have infusion reactions, then you're talking about paclitaxel also. You have to give patients steroids and antihistamines before they get treatment with paclitaxel specifically because they can have infusion reactions. What about nitrogen busters? So nitrogen busters, one of the most common things that you really hear about with them, of course, they can certainly cause patients to have bone marrow suppression. So you look at anemias, thrombocytopenias, neutropenia, that's there. But hemorrhagic cystitis is not something you necessarily see with these patients because the dose is a bit lower. But another nitrogen buster, which is what? So cyclophosphamide is one, there's another one that's commonly used. It starts with the I's and E's. Ifosfamide. So ifosfamide causes hemorrhagic cystitis, so much so that you had to give an antidote called Mesna. So nitrogen mustard, you should also always think about high dose nitrogen mustards and hemorrhagic cystitis. Okay, so with our targeted therapy, we Kadcyla, Herceptin, and pertuzumab. And then, of course, the CDK4/6 inhibitors are considered to be targeted therapy also. So when talking about Herceptin specifically, what did I say is something we have to screen for initially? the cardiotoxicity. Okay, so they need to get an echo at baseline, and they get it every 3 months while they're on therapy. Now, pertuzumab, it causes a gastrointestinal side effect. Y'all remember which one it is? Diarrhea. Okay, called diarrhea. Okay. The Kadcyla is relatively benign, maybe cause a light amount of nausea and vomiting. You still do have to get the baseline echo because it is trastuzumab conjugated with antimicrotubule. Immunotherapy, we only talked about one immunotherapy. What was it?
Pertuzumab.
Immunotherapy, checkpoint inhibitor. Pembrolizumab. Pembrolizumab is a checkpoint inhibitor, it's a PD-L1 inhibitor, and it's immunotherapy. So with that being said, what did I say about the cascade across the body with immunotherapy, checkpoint inhibitors? Inflammation, okay? Inflammation from head to toe. Every major organ can have some type of inflammatory process that decreases its activity or causes a problem in reference to a thyroid gland being inflamed, elevating the TSH, which is secondary to you having a decreased amount of thyroid hormone available, and will cause us to have to possibly do what? Start a patient on what drug? Levothyroxine. Levothyroxine. So those CDK4/6 inhibitors like abemaciclib, what are the side effects we worry about with them? So diarrhea specifically with abemaciclib, and then what's following the diarrhea? Neutropenia. So diarrhea and neutropenia at the top of the list. Those are the top reasons why patients possibly need to be taking out therapy in addition to fatigue. But I just want to make sure that you understand that neutropenia is a class effect, and diarrhea is specific to abemaciclib when you're talking about CDK4/6 inhibitors. So what's the significance of adultrastuzumab intensin, which is the Kadcyla? When do we use it? Residual disease at what point in therapy?
Treatment positive.
Well, remember what happens is that you give patients the chemotherapy, neoadjuvant, and then they come in and theoretically all of the disease should be gone. The chemotherapy, the systemic therapy should have gotten rid of it. However, if there's remaining disease even after they've gotten all of their chemotherapy, then they're considered to have a suboptimal response and they have residual disease. That's when they're at a higher risk of recurring later on in their life, and the Kadcyla is more appropriate than the Herceptin or pertuzumab, and that's what the Catherine trial proved. That's why I wrote Catherine right there in capitals. The Catherine trial is the clinical trial that was completed by the drug company to essentially look at neoadjuvantly treated patients who get Herceptin and pertuzumab for the year versus getting Kadcyla or adultrastuzumab intensin for 14 cycles, and what was their durable response and how long did it keep the disease away. All right. What's the most common histology of cervical cancer? Squamous cell. What are therapeutic options for patients who have stage 3 cervical cancer? Do we want to do surgery on them, like a total abdominal hysterectomy, or what do we want to do? Radiation with what?
Cisplatin.
With cisplatin. We want to do external beam and what? Brachytherapy. External beam and brachytherapy. Being sensitized with the cisplatin. At what dose? 40 milligram for what? 40 milligram per meter squared. With a maximum dose of what? 7. That's correct. What is the dosing, the duration, and the frequency of abemaciclib when it's being used in the early stage of breast cancer? 150 milligram? Twice a day? 2 years? Is it continuous or is it 3 weeks on and 1 week off? Continuous. Okay. What's the utility of bone modifying agents in patients who are postmenopausal who have breast cancer? Like, why is it important? What patient population is important and why is it important?
Men hormones.
Say what? postmenopausal patients who
Taking aromatase
who are taking endocrine therapy, it increases the risk of them having osteopenia, osteoporosis. So the bone modifying agents are there to protect them from skeletal fractures when they're on endocrine therapy and they're postmenopausal. And we talked about the toxicity of immunotherapy and possible supportive care like thyroid hormone replacement that we might use. So what's the utility of pembrolizumab in breast cancer, and what's the utility of pembrolizumab in cervical cancer? Triple negative patients in breast cancer, okay? And then when you're talking about systemic therapies with cervical cancer, in combination with chemotherapy and Avastin, you can use pembrolizumab. So it's now the preferred agent in systemic treatment of cervical cancer in combination with chemotherapy, and it's the preferred agent in triple negative patients who have breast cancer in combination with chemotherapy. Do you have any questions? I cannot place this closer in front of you than I just did. It's not possible. Dr. Chuan, you have anything else? Practically, yeah, that's fine. You can. Yeah, you can. That's fine. Go ahead, tell them you.
So the practice case that we went through earlier today, there's a rubric that goes with it, just as there is a rubric that goes with your OsteoCase next week. So it's everything we went through, and I am going to post it right now. It's exactly what we went through. We went through a little bit more detail than is on the rubric, but remember I mentioned that some of the details we went through, you don't need it for the OSCE. It's a little bit in depth, but it will help you on the rotations and on the boards. Certain information. I'm sorry?
She said group of individuals, one-on-one. This is a group? No way, man. This is a one-on-one outcome. Yeah, this is the questions for the song.